first introducing all of our panelists this afternoon. I'm going to start with Aisha Kreutz, sitting right here. And Chaplain Aisha Kreutz is an active Republican. She serves as a corporate chaplain with Chaplain Fellowship Ministries, and she also serves as president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation of New York. She works with a number of area pro-life groups and also a number of community organizations. And followed by Aisha, I'm going to welcome Monroe County Legislator John Lightfoot. He's a lifelong Rochesterian. His interest and inspiration for politics dates back to when his uncle, the late Honorable Willie Walker Lightfoot, also served in the Monroe County Legislature. And John Lightfoot is a community advocate and volunteer with a number of neighborhood and community organizations. Next, we have Valeria Sinclair Chapman, and she's a senior lecturer in political science at the University of Rochester. She's also director of the graduate programs for the David T. Kern Center. She's published a number of books and articles, including The Keys to Legislative Success in the U.S. House of Representatives. And then following, we have Henry Smith Jr. He is a former Kodak employee. He retired in 1987 after 32 years with the photo giant. And shortly thereafter, he began his political career. He has served 4 terms as Orleans County Legislator, and he serves in the RGRTA Board of Directors, as well as on the Orleans Genesee Community Action Board of Directors, to name a few. And he currently owns and operates the HLSJ Driving Academy. And last and certainly not least, Mia Hodgins. She's a community activist in Rochester. She has served as a campaign staffer for a number of candidates running for office locally, nationally, also internationally. She worked as part of the Labor Party re-election team under former Prime Minister Tony Blair. And in 2011, she ran for the Rochester City School Board. You know, looking at this film and looking at the history of how things have moved and shifted, with African Americans predominantly supporting the Republican Party line, and then we see the shift, especially predominantly after Johnson's presidency, to African Americans being more drawn to the Democratic Party line. How is it that right now in 2012, we just don't seem to have that balance? We heard it from Edward Brooke, we heard it from Tavis Smiley, Cornel West, the need for a solid 2-party system. There just doesn't seem to be that balance when it comes to African Americans being drawn more to the Republican ticket. And you ever would like to take that, you can go with it.
I think you see a lot, and you heard in the film, that a lot of people, they vote Democratic because this is what my parents did, and I will continue to do that. And they really never take a good look at the other side to see what's being offered.
I don't know that I have a super short answer, but I think that what the film brings up is that African Americans want a competitive 2-party system. I think that we need to call on the parties to present viable platforms that allow for choice for African Americans. So to suggest that, well, I think we need to be careful about suggesting that it is the onus is on Black voters to somehow give a party a chance when they are not going to be responsive. So I think the work of recruiting African Americans to the Republican Party belongs to the Republican Party. And I think that African Americans have historically sought to be kind of swing votes, particularly in urban communities, right? And so up until the 1970s, African Americans were still kind of going back and forth between Republican candidates and Democratic candidates. That's what they hoped for. That was a strategy in presidential elections. But after the 1968 campaigns, after Nixon started pushing forward a Southern strategy, the Republican Party, I think, pushed out Black voters. And so hopefully we can talk about that a little bit more as we go forward, because I certainly agree with the film and with others, I think, here, that there are many synergies between the Republican Party and African Americans. African Americans are ideologically and socially, they're conservative. There are many connections that we could find in terms of religion and moral issues, but the Republican Party actually needs to be a party that reaches out to that community in a serious way.
Well, I agree with both of you, actually. You know, I think that a big part of it is
you know, the Republican Party has lost the media war, and they lost it a long time ago, partly, you know, for both of the reasons that the other two pointed out. But the reality is, I mean, the Republican Party is bad at reaching out to anyone, you know, I mean, whether, even as a conservative, if you're just a conservative, you're still the redheaded stepchild of the party, whether you're black, white, or anything else. So I think, you know, there's so many different ways that we can go with that. There's a lot of reasons I think that it's happened. But if we as individuals go forth and say, you know, I don't, you know, I know as a black Republican, you know, I don't expect and do not want necessarily the Republican Party to reach out to me. It's my party. You don't have to invite me to my party. It's mine. And I refuse, no matter what happens. I know what I believe in, and, you know, and what my platform is and who I am as a person. Therefore, I'm going to, you know, vote my values in that way. So I think it's, you know, again, and that's even two-party. So, does anyone in the audience have a question?
I'm Walter Cooper. I think it's a little too glib to look at the historical transition of the black voter from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. The trend really started in 1930 when President Hoover tried to put on the Supreme Court an out-and-out racist judge from Alabama, the Judge John J. Parker. And then with the social problems of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, you saw a growing trend of the black voter to the Democratic Party. But I think in the final analysis, whether you're Democrat or Republican, we have to start taking ourselves serious, and we don't. Because we've seen elections in Detroit for mayor, and the first election in Newark, where a well-trained, well-educated black candidate was refused the mayoral seat in those two cities. And we are not going to get out of this deep trap that we are in this country unless we better educate people and be more serious about the people whom we elect to political office. And Republicans or Democrats can't be our ultimate salvation. We have to be interested in saving ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you for having me today. It's an honor and a pleasure. We talk about the Democrats and Republicans on the parties, but from a political point of view, from my point of view, we as elected officials or these party machines, I believe, have a tendency to believe that they do a cost-benefit calculation. I mean, we analyze these numbers and we look for where voters that can identify with us, that are like us, who we can communicate with, and we crunch those numbers to see if we can have the majority. So sometimes white leaders have it's easier for them to be able to identify with white voters. So they're going to go out and try to solicit those voters. Mr. West brought it up. We solicit whoever we can to maintain and take power. That is what our goal is, Democrats or Republicans. And so we have to maximize our resources. If I have X amount of dollars, these are the amount of votes I can get, I will solicit them. That's our investment. So a lot of times the strategies are there. So if Republicans want to get Democrat votes, then Republicans need to be in Democrat neighborhoods on a regular basis. If that's not happening, the voters who live in that community are going to vote for people who they feel familiar with and comfortable with. That's just the way it works. So the investment for any party takes time. You have to nurture that. You just can't come out and put it out there. That's the purpose of a machine of the party, Democratic or Republican, because it has an overarching philosophy. But if you really want to make change, then the candidate has to be out there in the community, because there's 2 or 3 different types of leaders. There's a moral leader, someone like Gandhi, transformational leader, and there's a transactional leader. Most politicians are transactional leaders. Give me your vote, I'll give you a job. They're promises. And this is the message that people want. When I'm out there knocking on doors, what are you going to do for me? And so this is the message, and this is how people get identified with others. And I think that that is something that any candidate needs to do. Thank you.
I think it's very important for us to realize that we're not just votes, we're actually people. And that if you want my support for your party, your individual platform, you're running for whatever office, you need to come to me as an individual. I have a choice to vote for you, whether you're on the Republican side, the Democratic side, or on any side. I myself ran as a third-party candidate by creating my own party line, as well as being endorsed by the Working Families Party when I ran for school board in 2011. I went out to voters in every single district across the city, Republicans, Democrats, Working Family Party, Green Party members, anybody I could find, and asked them for their support, because I wanted them to support me as an individual and not as somebody who you're just going to follow the party machine, the party line, and what somebody else is telling you. I believe that every person is in fact their own person with their own ideas and their own values that we can all support, and that people need to come out and ask for your support and not just assume you're going to support them based on what group you belong to.
Thank you. I guess I wanted to kind of respond to Dr. Cooper. I don't think he would necessarily point directly at me, but I wasn't trying to give a kind of glib response about history. What I am suggesting is that Black voters are smart and strategic. And so when we think about, that Blacks vote for the Democratic Party just because their parents did, or because they've been bamboozled, or somehow duped into doing so, I think we take away the kind of smart, thoughtful voter impulses that are relevant in the Black community. And so historically, we have seen that Blacks were perfectly willing to vote for Republican candidates who recruited their votes, who offered them something, who put something on the table and actually invited Blacks to not only come and have a seat, to not only show up, to not only be window dressing, but to actually contribute to agenda setting. And I think that makes a difference. And so, I think back to somebody like Adam Clayton Powell, who's clearly a Democrat, born and bred Democrat from Harlem, but he broke with party ranks to support Eisenhower in 1956. Black people were perfectly willing to support candidates who would be responsive. And I think that Powell's example, as well as other examples, point to the desire to be a swing vote, to somehow be in the middle with that small number that can swing the vote from one presidential candidate to another. And I think that Republicans could capitalize on that if they presented a platform that Blacks would be drawn to. I actually think that there's room for that.
It appears that Mitt Romney will win the Republican candidacy to oppose Barack Obama. Where do you see this election going at a local level? And one other comment I want to make, and I want you to respond to. I had the opportunity to talk to, at one time, the third ranking member of the Republican Party, who happened to be an All-American football player from the state of Oklahoma when they won the national championship, J.C. White. And I asked him about the Republican Party. I said, what is the basic fundamental philosophy of the Republican Party? And you know what he told me? He backed up a few steps and he said, we kill each other off, we bury our dead, and we go back to business as usual. That is the Republican Party. And if you understand that, within the Republican ranks, you might survive. But that, he told me purposely, is the Republican Party. So I'd like to hear your comments on the upcoming election and the basic philosophy of the Republican Party.
I think it's going to be a real close election. I do believe that if the Republicans, especially black Republicans, going to have a good shot at this. They're going to have to go out and do some soliciting to the community. You just can't put a message up and expect everyone to follow it. I do believe that they would have a good chance of doing that if you go door to door and ask for a person's vote. And I got to tell you that years ago, before I got involved in the Republican Party, I lived in Rochester prior to that. And when someone came and asked for my vote, I gave it to them. I really did. But I do believe, though, that if you want someone's vote, you got to go out and ask for it. I do believe that Romney will have a good shot at it.
I disagree. I don't think that Mitt Romney will have locally the support that he may nationally. And I do think, though, on a national level, Mitt Romney does have the best of any of the Republican potential nominees to gain the support because he is such a liberal Republican, I believe. He's more in the middle. He's a moderate Republican. He, as the former governor of the state of Massachusetts, had a form of what Republicans like to call Obamacare, a statewide health care system. Their state was also the first to have legalized gay marriage. And so there was a lot of liberal agenda items that were passed under Governor Romney. But locally, I don't think they'll have the support. There's not enough Republicans in the city of Rochester, although there are 60,000 of you. Some of my friends are in the audience. And in the city, I don't see it. New York is a Democratic state typically, and I just disagree. As far as the Republican Party getting people together and killing off the challengers, historically that's what we've seen. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to kill Romney off. He's been running for president for about 10 years. I don't know. But I think that's one of the strengths of the Republican Party, actually, is that they do kind of kill everybody. They rally behind one person and kill off the others, whereas the Democrats will fight it out until the end. And so that can be a strength in that they will all support eventually one person while we're still infighting.
I mean, I'm curious about that question. I think that J.C. Watt, I think he was influential in the Republican Party. He really pushed the Republican leadership to support historically black colleges and universities, for example. So he was elected in Oklahoma with a majority white constituency, but when he got to the Republican Party, when he got to Congress, he said that there were still important issues to him in the black community, and I think that he demonstrated a way for black Republicans to really be influential in changing the quality of life or experiences for blacks on the ground that could work with other, throughout the Republican Party. In terms of kind of knocking off their own, I wonder if J.C. Watt wasn't talking about himself, right? So at the end of his experience in the Republican Party, I think there was some bitterness that he wasn't able to move as far up in the ranks in the Republican leadership in the House of Representatives. I think as well about Colin Powell and the way that the Republican Party kind of distanced themselves from him after, around the 2008 election, and this whole idea of rhinos and who's a real Republican. And so there are some risk associated with black candidates or black Republicans who would sincerely push an agenda that's responsive to a black community. And if the Republican Party could be more open to those kinds of proposals, I actually think that the Republican Party could be much more competitive in the black community.
In respects to the J.C. Watt's comment, but that's the same in the Democrat Party too. I don't see that's, I think maybe he answered the question a little bit differently than, what the gentleman was what he was actually asking for an answer is, what our platform in the Republican Party. But the Democrat Party just goes about things a little bit differently. There are a lot more backdoor deals where they cut people off and say, no, you're not going to. But the Democrat Party is also historically, they do rally behind that person in the end. The Republican Party, though, we haven't learned that lesson. That's actually a lesson we haven't learned that. We do not get behind the lesser of two evils, and we can see that even in the Mitt Romney case. Because as a black conservative, I'm a conservative Republican, and that's where I stand. Jesus Christ is my first and foremost thing, and I'm going to vote that value. And it's difficult when you have rhinos, Republicans in name only, that come and you see the Republican Party moving more and more to the left, where the line is blurred and you can barely tell the difference, especially in a place like New York. You can barely tell the difference between the Republican and the Democrat Party. They might talk it, but when you look at their voting records, you're like, well, who are you? Versus in the Republican Party, we say, well, no, this is what I believe. I believe something to my core, and therefore I expect to, we want people to be elected that represent that. I know with McCain in that election, that was the first time that I ever voted for the lesser of two evils. I did. I didn't want McCain. I had no, it was a very tough election, but, I had to suck it up at that point. This election, I was I am a Santorum supporter. That is my guy. He's the most conservative out of the lot. I don't see how, it's difficult with the whole Romney, and I think that it might be, maybe a close election, but really I don't think it will be. It's going to be very difficult to rally the Republican base for Romney because of the things that Mia had pointed out. It is going to be difficult for him because he's going to lose. I always liken it to, and all along the things that I've been saying is, it's like if you can have a Gucci purse that's real for $15, or a Gucci purse that's a knockoff for $15, which one are you going to choose? You have Mitt Romney and Obama. One is the real thing, one is a knockoff. It's going to be difficult to pull the black vote, the liberal vote, the Democrat vote over to Romney. And Romney's also going to have a very difficult time pulling the conservative vote from the Republican Party. We don't just come and say, okay, which is another reason that black Republicans or conservative Republicans have a hard time within the Republican Party, is because we can't be owned. And we're saying, and they know, oh, you can't be controlled, therefore, okay, let's keep you at a distance, let's keep you on the outskirts, because we know that your agenda might be something that we then can't co-opt and turn into a political machine. And so we get it from both sides. You get it from the Democrat side, where, you get called whatever names, and you get it from the Republican side, where they're like, okay, you just don't say anything, just go away, because you guys are just a little bit too conservative for it. It's all this religious Jesus stuff, gotta go.
So Mitt Romney has a problem within the Republican Party. Now, I'm a registered Republican all my life. I've been a Republican, very proud to be. But if you want to call me, you can call me a conservative. I'm a Jack Kemp conservative. Mitt Romney has a problem within his own party. He's going to have a very difficult time getting 1/3 of the base to vote for him and to support him. I don't support Republicans who are not conservative. If you don't have a conservative bent, I don't want to know you. I'd rather vote for the Democrat. Democrats know who they are. They're leftists, leading socialists. And they're true to their form. They're who they say they are. But there are others like me throughout the country. And we're forming and we're talking to each other. Even white Republicans don't like us. But that's fine. Because eventually we'll rule the party. Right now, black, whites, and Hispanics that are Republican and conservative are 1/3 of the base.
All right, I love you, John. But I don't care how liberal Romney is. I think he picks a conservative vice president, and I think he gets the base together, and I think he wins it out.
That's different.
You gotta count the economy is bad. Unemployment is huge, especially in the black community. There are tons of blacks that can't stand Obama. They just don't say it out loud. And what they tell me, because my wife's black. But I think you're wrong. I think he's gonna pull it off. I don't care how liberal he is. and maybe it's Rubio, who knows? But then you get some of the Hispanic vote probably too. So, and he's pretty dang conservative, so
Well, let's see.
we'll agree to disagree.
And my question to the panel, and especially the Republicans or whatever, why is this growing polarization, and how do we attack in our political campaigns and so forth, how do we bring forth to the majority of the people what are the real issues which are in the middle of the road, and how do we campaign and bring forth candidates that, you know, are pushing these middle of the road issues that really affect us all?
It starts with the Republican Party not being afraid of the Black community in the city of Rochester. I would love to hear what some of my friends on the Republican side have to say to me specifically as an individual voter, because I'm not going to always just vote the party line. I didn't run on the party line. Why would you think that I'm going to vote on the party line? Just because I'm Black? Just because I live in the city? Because I make less than a certain amount? Because I live in a certain neighborhood? All those things are very disappointing to me, but those are also factors that the Republican Party can use to build upon getting my vote. And so I think that it has to start there.
I do believe, though, going forward, I believe you're going to see a lot of changes from the Republican Party. I think as the leadership, the new leadership comes in, I do believe that there will be some changes. In answer to your question, the middle of the road, sometimes if you want a Chevy, you ask for a Cadillac. And I believe that's just the way it is. I believe that's the way the leadership look at it.
I think that's actually right on point, that most Americans are right in the middle. You know, there's this book called The Myth of the Culture War, and it basically says, it's based on, I think, 2004, maybe 2008 elections. And it basically says that Americans, if we kind of had a distribution that of a bell curve, that we are closely divided, right? And so we might be Republicans or Democrats, but we're really on that bell curve, right? Most of us are right in the middle somewhere. And so we are closely divided on questions like abortion. We're closely divided on questions like the death penalty. We're closely divided on a whole range of issues. We're not deeply divided, so that there's just really small numbers in the middle. There's a lot of us very much in the middle. And I would argue, too, that politics is about compromise. But on any side, on almost any issue, if you want to hold your candidate accountable only to a single position on multiple issues, right? So when we sign pledges for or against taxes, or for or against this issue or that issue, and we trap our candidates or our representatives, then they really can't act for us in a way that really lends towards national representation and compromise. And so we have to figure out a way, I agree, to hold politicians, elected officials accountable, but to us in a way that is common sense. And it might not be liberal or conservative always. It might not be Republican or Democrat always. I mean, I'll tell you one thing, forgive me, I've forgotten his name, but the Republican that comes on WDKX on Saturday morning, Robot.
It's my former boss.
Okay, very good.
Joe Robot.
So I think that with his very presence on that show, with his demonstration of, he knows the music, he knows the rhythm of the conversation. These are small things, but politics is local. And I think that he draws a significant number of Black votes. Just with that, just something that simple. Mobilization matters. Asking for my vote counts. And so I think that there's room to actually gain those votes, but most of us are in the middle, and so the hard stances on the left or right, the polarization of the elites, it doesn't work to really get to common sense solutions. That's why we almost exploded last year with a debt ceiling. You know, we really have to come up with some common sense solutions.
I can speak now and talk all day. You asked for it first, so.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
All right.
I don't, let me say something. I don't think there's any vote. There's not going to be a switch of change People are going to hold their party lines, on a national level, and even on a local level, you can maybe sway a few by doing this hard work. I don't think that the Republican Party has the capacity to change these votes. They don't have the manpower to sit and nurture. This presidential election is too late to change any Democrats' mind on what they're going to do, because that nurturing process takes time, more than 6 to 8 months. But one strategy or tactic that politicians use, and you heard it in the video, is that they try to make the other party stay home. The other side of the voter stay home. And by that increases the other side's votes. There's some kind of mathematical terminology on it, of course. I tell my son all the time about basketball, so I don't want to get off point. But I don't see votes switching parties. One of the things that make things voters switch parties or change is what I guess these people who are in this type of mode, like the doctor here, call an election realignment. You ever heard that terminology? They throw it around all the time, and it has all this different meanings to it. I'm just picking up learning it myself today because I want to be prepared. But the Los Angeles Times reports the realignment with Clinton, because Republicans led the presidency for so long, but Clinton was a champion in changing the votes. And they even say that he banked votes so that when he left, there was enough votes left for other people who ran behind him. And so, as we saw in the movie here, the alignment changed when Martin Luther King supported, was it Kennedy? Yeah, I'm not the historian here. So, but these things, so what is the swooping, overarching policy that the people, remember I talked about the followers? What is the overarching, what is deep-rooted in the followers? And then that leader, whatever side they're on, Republican or Democrat, will be that transformative leader that will realign your party votes. That's what I want to say. Thanks.
With the polarization part of it, I mean, it is, and I am, I'm as far right as they come, so I'm just putting that out there, that I'm not a party person, so, I mean, that's just who I am. So I'm coming from that perspective, okay? But we have platforms in the party. I mean, the Republican Party has a platform. The Democrat Party has a platform. So if you have a platform and you don't believe in the platform, why are you in the party? That's where I come from. So when I look at those rhinos or Republicans in name only, I look at them and I go, but this is what our platform stands for. So if you don't believe in these things, or you're going to pick a couple of them and then you're going to stick around, for me, it's the same thing as like, I can call myself a chair or a Christian or whatever, but if I don't really believe it, if I don't believe that the Bible is the Word of God, why am I calling myself a Christian? And although, I know politics and religion and all those things are different, and because we have only a two-party system, it is a little bit difficult that you have to pick a party. But I'm not one of those big tent people, where I'm like, oh, I don't think that it's like, oh, everybody, okay, maybe you have this, because I think you just get corrupted and you can't tell the line between them. So if you're telling me, when I look at the Democrat Party platform, and I say, okay, this is what their platform, this is who they are, this is what they stand for, if it doesn't align with my values, then I have to ask myself, well, where am I going to be? And I think that's why you have so many independents now, is because I think they kind of do that. And they're like, well, I don't really believe all of this, I don't really believe all of this, so I'm going to go here. So there's a polarization that I think is just going to be natural, and it's been since the beginning of the history of this country. It's not anything new that we do that. We go through lulls where people get complacent in that. But the other end of that is, I don't believe that politics change people. I believe that the hearts of the people change the politics.
I just had a couple of questions and a comment. First off, congratulations to whoever brought this film in. I am a conservative Republican, and I've been one for over 35 years. I am just returning to Rochester, and just about a year ago, I registered as a conservative, more so than a Republican. In fact, I even went out to Pittsburgh and met with the conservative chairman, just to let him know I'm in town. And he was surprised. Quick comment. 35 years ago, there was a young man that worked at Lincoln Chase Bank, where I banked at when I had my landscaping business. I'm a capitalist too. And he, at the same time, I worked at a radio station, just as an afternoon disc jockey. Anyway, he asked me to write some commercials because I believe the councilwoman at that time was Maxine Childress Brown, I think. Anyway, long story short, he was a Republican. I was not even registered to vote. He asked me to write some commercials. I said, I'll be more than happy to do that. His name was Brian Campbell. I wrote the commercials. The gist of those commercials went something like this. If a politician walks into a room full, if a Democratic politician walks into a room full of black voters, he doesn't have to do anything because he knows how they're going to vote. And same thing for a Republican walking into the same room. The tagline was, think for yourself, vote Brian Campbell City Council based on the issues. Those commercials ran for about a week. Brian got a call from those mythological people up on high who said in so many words, boy, you better take that commercial off the air. Well, he was dejected, he didn't run the race, etc. But I registered as a Republican only because I had to back up what I was saying on the radio. At least when I walked into a room, talk to me on the issues now, because now you don't know. The next comment is that I believe in our community that we get our news and information in a very one-sided, very myopic funnel. I'll give you a couple of examples. The president spoke about the Buffett rule, where he wants to tax people who are making millions and billions and get a more equitable rate, like Warren Buffett's secretary. Well, what he has done is that he has misconstrued the issue. Number one, his tax return is online. You can go to whitehouse.gov. He took the Bush tax cut. It's right on his tax reform. The last thing I wanted to say is that I'm a conservative because I simply believe in the value system. It's nothing more than that. Conservatives and Republicans, we have our issues. That's why I wanted this primary to go all the way to the end, to get our issues out there, whether you're a rhino or you're a conservative or whatever the case might be. Black people deep down are conservative, and if you'd like to debate the issue afterwards, I'll be more than happy to convince you otherwise.
Well, I actually really didn't have a question. I had a comment after listening to the panel. Because now I'm doing some deep thinking about becoming an independent.
That's funny.
Only because when I listened to Aisha when she was saying something about, she had to suck it up and go vote for McCain, and I was like, no, I wouldn't vote for McCain. I would stay home. So that's in me. It wouldn't have been counted anyway. So, and then when somebody said, well, black people talk about Obama. Or they don't. I am kind of upset that he didn't do all of the things that he said he was going to do, but from what I'm understanding about the whole thing is that he hasn't had support in the Congress or in the House. So, it's going to be tough for me to decide, how I'm going to do it, but I think I will vote for him before I would Mitt Romney. But this conversation has been very hard because they say one of the things you don't do in public is talk about politics. And, there's some opinions that's been said right there on the panel that's been very powerful and explosive. So it gave me some deep thought. And this is why I was kind of busting at the seam, but I lost my main topic. But a lot of things like Cornell and Tavis, what they were saying is that if the Republicans figure out how to change and cooperate or engage other people, and they say they may not believe them at first, would be the right thing. But then Tavis said they figured out that they don't even need our vote. So why would I vote, for somebody who don't hang out with a party, who don't want to hang out with me? And when I'm in that booth, I'm a registered Democrat, but I don't vote all the way across the board Democrat.
Politicians do a cost-benefit calculation when they're out there.
especially on national races. It's all about those dollars and cents and getting employed sometimes for these candidates. And they trade, and they sell us out sometimes. So it's up to us to work to try to hold them accountable. Thanks.
I think I'd like to say just two things. One is that when you look at the kind of the shift that you see in the Democratic Party, it was deliberate. So you can remember, at least in history, the '68 political Democratic National Convention. It was crazy. So blacks were complaining about not being present. You know, the Vietnam protesters, all of these kinds of responses. And afterwards, the Democratic Party took a deliberate step to diversify its delegation by deliberately increasing the numbers of women and minorities in the party. The Republican Party could do the exact same thing. In doing so, and increasing the delegates, whether it was conservative, whatever those important demographics are, they would actually then have people not only invited to the table, I think that's what Christine Todd Whitman said, not only invite them to the table, but actually let them help set the agenda. When they do that, when they have common sense representatives of the party who go out into the community to win, then I think it'll work. What I actually think is going on in the Republican Party is that there's risk associated with having too many black faces, because they may actually lose white voters who they think are racist. I'm not suggesting to you that I think that white Republican voters are racist, but if the party believes that they are, or that they are racially conservative, then that is how they're going to respond in their policies. And I think that the Republican Party needs to give more credibility to its own voters, to move them so that their party looks much different, and they will actually be black voters, I think, will be much more responsive, precisely for the reason that Aisha is saying. The other thing, this last comment, is that you look at this recent commentary from the Republican Party candidates, and I tell you, it's not very inviting to a black voter. So when Newt Gingrich says, you know, I want to be the party of paychecks instead of welfare, I'm thinking, who are you talking to? You know, what do you mean? And he's not inviting me to the party. He's signaling to people who he thinks are listening to him that don't look like me. And so, and I had the same critique of Rick Santorum, who I actually liked as a candidate because he was consistent and straightforward. But when he talked about, you know, blacks and those entitlements, it's a signal to conservative, white conservative voters that they act in a way that they think that black citizens are somehow going to take from this country instead of giving back. And I think that our leaders, we should call on them to lead more, to be transformational, and to not kind of pander to the base nature of who we are. And so last thing is the Republican Party in 1970s, 1960s, there was Lee Atwater said, all you need is 20% of the black vote, Republicans stay in office. I actually think that's true. So if Republicans want to actually be strategic about winning, then they actually need to come up with a strategy for recruiting just a sliver of black voters, and it could change the outcomes. And let me just say that that's not what I'm advocating for. So I hope that people will turn out to vote in November. I think it does matter that we turn out to vote, but I think there are some sincere ways that the Republican Party could do more.
Thank you. I just want to thank you all for this opportunity that you've given me today to come here and say a few words. And I want to thank you, Kevin, for the invite. And as to Newt Gingrich, I think he's out. He's just wasting everybody's time, really. I live in a county of 44,000 people, and there's only 7% of us there, 7% being people of color. And I was elected to the legislature. And I think that's saying a lot to the party or about the party. So I do believe that in some areas, the Republicans are reaching out. And I think it's been great for me. And I certainly am always out looking for or to recruit people to go out and vote, especially Republicans, because I think there's opportunities there.
I also want to thank everybody for coming today and learning this valuable information, watching this film. I think it was very enlightening, and you could have done a lot of other great things around the city of Rochester that's becoming a lot more culturally inclusive to all of our people here. I do want to remind everyone, excuse me, to, of course, come out and vote. But also, I want to challenge the Republican Party of the city of Rochester to actually come into the city of Rochester and ask for my vote. Ask me for my vote. I challenge you to come to my door and ask me for my vote, because I'm sick of being overlooked by my own party, the Democrats, and assuming that I'm just gonna vote for them because I am a registered voter. I've had so many experiences, and actually was surprised that my own city council person finally did come to my doorstep when I was then on the ballot for another office for the very first time, although I've been registered as a Democrat in the city of Rochester for over 10 years that I've lived here. So that is my challenge to you, the Republican Party. I know there's 60,000 of you here in the city. Come out, talk to us, because as we all pointed out, there's a lot more of us in the middle with a lot of shared values that we may be able to come to compromise, come to terms on, and elect the best representative for our community.
RABJ did this because we thought it was important to dialogue about two-party politics in the black community. We wanted to open this dialogue up. We didn't want to endorse any one way of thinking or endorse one party or the other, but we felt it's very important as a community to discuss the benefits of the two-party politics. Well, I thought it was a good documentary. It raised a lot of important points, and I think as it's said in the documentary, the Republican Party has a long way to go to support its own candidates, its own black candidates, and it also has a long way to go on the ground level to get people into the community, into the black community, and make their stance known. As we head toward the election this year, I'm not sure. I think it was brought out in the documentary as well that there's enough time to set up that structure to do that, but that looks like that's what's going to be needed in the future if the Republican Party is going to make any impact at all in the black community. Oh, the panelists were excellent. They were all well-spoken, beautiful thoughts and ideas came through. Really thought-provoking people. I really appreciate them coming and take the time out to share their expertise as an organization. I think I can speak on behalf of us and say that we all are really appreciative of having all of them here.
The fear of a black Republican, I thought it was good. I think that his documentary was a little long. He didn't have to keep reiterating the situation. I got it. But in the situation, he brought up some good points and he got some good answers. So I'm glad his knowledge was, his appetite was fed.
Oh, I love the film. I think Kevin Williams did a great job on it. I think he really did justice, I think, to a lot of the things that as a black Republican that we go through. So I really enjoyed it. I've seen it a couple times and I enjoy it every time.
Well, I appreciate the RABJ for bringing the film to our attention in the Rochester community. I think it's very important for us to have the discussion about the quote-unquote fear of a black Republican, because I think it's not so much about that fear, but it's raised the questions about how the African American community is taken for granted by both parties, and that there needs to be a discussion from both sides to all African Americans to find out, can you get my vote?
I thought it was very interesting. It brought a lot of items to light that I guess I should say I was not really aware of. So I thought I learned a lot from the film itself.
Actually, I enjoyed the conversation probably a little bit more than I thought I was going to. I wasn't quite sure, coming into this what it was going to be like, but I love when the audience gets to ask questions and we get to respond and talk to them that way. That's one of my favorite things, so I think the setup was really good and the way that they handled it. I think they were fair and balanced in the way they presented everything as well.
It took me a while to understand what kind of meeting I was in, actually. I didn't know I was in a room full of black Republicans, being the African-American Democrat. So, but the panelists, were knowledgeable. I really liked the doctor because she understood a lot of the terminology used and by us political leaders. And but this thing comes into a cost-benefit calculation. It really is. At the end of the day, we crunch numbers. Though maybe not the politicians, but they have a staff member that is crunching the numbers to find out where they can solicit a majority amount of votes.
Oh, excellent turnout, actually. When we got here, because we do a lot of different events as well, and I'm like, hey, for a first time, that's better than mine. So, we do a lot of different things like this. So I think the turnout, I would say a good 40, well, it was a full house and standing room only in the end. So I think they did a good job. And the diversity of the group, I think, is really what was the spectacular part of it, that you didn't have a one-sided conversation, that it was a lot of different people.
I thought the turnout was excellent. I feel that a lot of the panelists raised a lot of great points, and it really got the conversation started. And of course, here we are, half an hour, 45 minutes after the panel has ended, and we still have a group of about 20, 25 people in the room continuing the conversation. I think that's very important and very necessary in Rochester to keep African Americans engaged and talking about politics when it's not the day or a week or month before the election.
Well, RIBJ is striving to make ourselves known in the community as an organization that will bring to the forefront issues of importance to people of color. And not only about journalism, but also, as you can see this afternoon, politics and other issues. So we hope to continue to do that, and I think that we got off to a good start with this event today.